let's move on to our next issue about the conduct of public officers and how the issues have been coming up in recent times as a result of one of the most engaging development in this country this year. That's the Cecilia Abena-Dapaah missing cash case. Now, that saga has brought questions, and people have been asking about the conduct of public officials. A draft bill that seeks to regulate the conduct of these officials, we understand, is at cabinet for consideration. But how will the existence of a code of ethics ensure good conduct from public officials? Let's zoom into that discussion. I still have with me Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, CDD Ghana Fellow, Mr. Vitus Azeem, he's an anti-graft campaigner, long-standing one. Mr. Kweku Paintel is a legal practitioner. Well, Doc, let me start with you on this code of conduct that we're expecting it to come out. I understand that we already have the Conduct of Public Officers Bill 2013. What is the status of that, and why do we need a new one, which we understand is at the cabinet level?
So from what I understand in terms of, I think something the Attorney General said that it needs strengthening, right? That you need something in place that have a much stronger bite that, you know, allows you to get the kind of behavior from public officials that you hope for, which is what I think is driving, you know, the new draft bill that is making its way through the process. But for me, the bigger question is not how many rules we put in place or how many new rules we put in place. For me, the bigger question is always how ready are we to enforce the rules that we put in place? Because if the rules we put in place are not enforced, then you can write as many new rules as you want. You can make them stronger, you can make them tougher, you can put a more stronger, you know, sanctions regime in place, stiffer punishments, etc., etc. And I'm not saying those things don't help. Those things are necessary, but they are not sufficient if, when situations arise, those rules would not be applied, those sanctions would not be applied, or they would not be enforced. So that, for me, is where sometimes our good intentions behind writing rules falls apart, which is the will and the determination to strictly enforce them without fear or fail.
So the issue is not about, you know, the sort of laws that we have, but about enforcement. So if we have to come out with anything like that, any bill of that sort, what should be the defining characteristics in this bill such that you and I can be confident that if well enforced, it could help us achieve our aim?
Right. So, I mean, in something like that, it's you have to look out for the mechanisms you put in place to structure the behavior that you want in public officials. So I'll use myself as an example. I work at a public university. Every year, I'm required to file an ethics disclosure statement. And in that statement, I have to report, even though I've already filed my taxes with the IRS, I have to report all my sources of income. I have to report any investments that I have for myself, any investments that I have on behalf, you know, of my children. If I've gone to work anywhere else, even work that I do on a voluntary basis. For example, I'm a fellow with CDD Ghana. I have to report all of that. So those are the rules in place. But there are also mechanisms that ensure that those rules are followed. So every year before the due date comes around, I get an email from the legal counsel's office of my university to say, this thing is due and you have to complete it. And if you are unable to complete it on the due date, you have to file for an extension with the ethics office of the New York State, which is the state in which I live. You would also get reminders from the states that this thing is due. Once you file it, you do get an acknowledgement from the state that it's been done. And if it is reviewed. So if there are issues that are not clear, if there are questions that are not clear, you can expect that you would get a follow-up that says, can you clarify your answer in point 1, or can you clarify your answer in point 2, right? So those kinds of mechanisms, gives you that confidence that it's not just something on paper that says you have to do it, but there are also others who are involved in the process of monitoring it and ensuring that, 1, you have completed it, that 2, the system is counting on the fact that you have completed it honestly to the best of your ability. But there is also a verification process that allows the enforcement officers at the back end of the process to validate whatever it is that you have reported. And so when you put a code of conduct in place, which this draft bill is seeking to do, you also want to make sure that it has the kinds of processes and mechanisms that ensures that, 1, the public officials who are required to report whatever it is that they have to report, for example, will do it on time. And there's someone who ensures that they do. And if they don't, there is a penalty for that. If I don't, I can get, for example, in my case, I can get an extension for filing, right? But even that, I have to make a case for why I need an extension for filing that statement. And if I refuse to file it, there are sanctions, including losing my job that I can face. So those are some of the things that you can put in place to give a code of conduct and ethics bill some bite.
And in your jurisdiction, is this something that, I mean, the information you've provided to the authorities is available to the public that they can access when the need arises?
Yes, when the need arises. So everything from my role, my office's budget, my salary, all of those things are public information that the public can access, and all of it is done so that if I'm living a certain lifestyle that doesn't necessarily match my
income,
my salary and benefits as a public officer or someone who is associated with a public institution, questions can be raised, and I can be called upon to explain why, as an officer with a public university, I'm earning X amount, and yet my lifestyle seems to suggest that, or my lifestyle doesn't, quote unquote, match what my salary seems to suggest. And sometimes there could be legitimate reasons for that, but these are the things that ensure that those of us who work, in the public sector, do not create a certain impression in the minds of citizens that we are engaged in unethical behavior.
Must it be a similar arrangement if we are to do it in Ghana? I'm asking this because our declaration of asset as it stands now is treated as confidential. So if I declare that I have so and so properties, it will not be giving out to the public. It's only held by the Auditor General and his, mandated officers, but not the general public. That's why I'm asking whether there should be a practice that Ghana should look at.
Yeah, I mean, every country has to look at its, country context when it is developing these things. But I honestly believe that a practice like that helps. And it helps the public servants themselves. I don't think we have gotten to that point where public servants recognize that some of these rules are designed to protect them. Protect them in the sense that they are always under a veil of suspicion. They are always viewed as, guilty until you prove your innocence, things like that. And so when you shine a light on the things that you are able to shine a light on, that it protects you, the public servant, it protects you from getting into trouble. If you look at our asset declaration, for example, if I understand what happens, even the Auditor General to whom the asset declaration is filed cannot even take a look at it, right? So can you imagine, I can give you an envelope in which I claim that I have declared my assets, and for all you know, it could even be an empty sheet. But there has to be some reasonable amount of verification in the process, right? That you can designate individuals who can at least look at that asset declaration, verify that you have truthfully reported everything. And then on a year-to-year basis, be able to do some comparisons to see what has significantly changed. Like I said, in my case, if I report a particular income in a given year, and the following year I file my ethics disclosure, and my income has doubled or tripled, it would definitely raise a red flag. There could definitely be legitimate reasons why my income has doubled or tripled, but I would have to explain that when a red flag is triggered. And all of those things, for me, again, it's designed to protect you the public official. It helps you not get into trouble. It helps you not continue to live under this veil of suspicion, right? Because everybody sort of has this perception that people in the public sector are in there not to serve or not to offer a public good or serve the public, but are in there for themselves. And all of those things, for me, are designed to really help protect the system and protect those who work in the system. Okay.
Let me bring in Mr. Vitus Azeem now. Mr. Azeem, you've been around for a very long time. All of these issues are things that you've contributed to over the years. What has been our challenge? Why we are not able to really have that, ethics of conduct for public officers, and to even have an effective asset declaration regime?
It was ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say that they are going to IMF to ask for support to develop a code of conduct there. Because this was done by the late Justice Clark. This has been worked on for a very long time. SHAC has produced guidelines for conduct of public officers, and civil society has put these things together. Parliament has produced one. President Mahama launched one for his political appointees. And for that, we say today that we are going to the IMF to look for money to develop a code of conduct law. I find it very, very ridiculous. Our leaders do not want a code of conduct law because they know what it will mean to them. They do not want to comply with the code of conduct. Even the asset declaration law it has now been incorporated into the code of conduct there.
Yeah.
We went with parliamentarians to go in 2008 to approve, to discuss and get approved the regulations. There were three key issues. One, inclusion of spouse and children of minor age. Two, verification. And three, publication. All these, the parliamentarians say no, they won't do that. That their spouses and children are not public officers and they should not be included in the asset declaration law. That the Constitution doesn't provide for verification and publication. So the three are overboard. And the Auditor General at the time also said that there was no point getting the regulation because, the parliamentarians did not want it passed. And so that asset declaration law is just in the shelf, regarding that. You put a blank sheet of paper in your envelope and give the asset declaration. He issues you the receipt, and that ends it. So we have the law already in draft. A very good law drafted by a renowned justice of the Supreme Court before. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We do not need new money to develop a code of conduct bill. We just need to bring it before Parliament, with Parliament cabinet approval. Few revisions, and it can be passed. But the political will is not there. People don't want to declare their assets because they want to hide their assets. And I think for me, that's very unfortunate, because if you are a public officer, there's no reason why you should want to hide certain aspects of their life. Of course, there are private things that you should hide, but not certain things, your behavior in the public domain. And so it's just inertia, lack of public interest, and political will to get the right thing done.
If that's the case, then it looks almost likely that we might never get that, because if the people who are mandated with the authority to get this done for us are not ready to commit to it, then we better take it that we're not going to have it at all. What must change? What must we do to ensure that that is done?
We are not going to have it now, because next year the parliamentarians are going to be busy with their campaigns, and at the end of the election, the bill will be thrown back, and it has to go through the same process again. This was the same thing that happened to the Right Information Bill. It will go to Parliament before they can even debate it. The time comes for new elections, and then it's thrown away. This is what has happened to this bill. This bill has already been put before Parliament before. So why are we talking about a new bill? It's because they don't want to do the right thing. So we are not likely to have it, at least not this time, because 2024 is not far away. Next year's campaign, parliamentarians are going to be busy doing their campaigns. They are not going to have time. Very soon the budget will be presented to Parliament again. They'll take a few days to just look at it and break up for Christmas. So I think that we even need a new breed, a new crop of parliamentarians if we want certain basic, important laws passed in this country for us. Otherwise, we'll just do the same thing.
So this bill you're talking about, that it's already before Parliament, is it a Conduct of Public Officers Bill 2013? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
That's
10 years old.
Yes.
10 years old. Do you need money to go and revise it to send it back to Parliament? A 10-year-old bill. We cannot get it passed. Whatever revisions are required, we have lawyers at the Attorney General's office. Do we need to look for money to get the bill through again, when we had engaged somebody to work on it? And it now incorporates the asset declaration provision into it. And that's what the most of them fear. Issues like, oh, if I declare my assets publicly, armed robbers will come after me. It is not the assets declared that armed robbers will come after you. They see you driving certain cars. They see you going to certain hotels to stay and to eat. They see the weddings you go and the presentations you make. They know that what you are capable of doing. But are you the most endangered species in town? You have bodyguards. You have security following. Some of them are using armed officers guiding them. What threats are they afraid of?
All right. Let me bring in Lawyer Kwaku Pentil here. Lawyer, what should be the key element in such a bill, if indeed we are to get one? Mr. Azeem tells us that the 2013 one is 10-year-old. It has not been passed. It's still in Parliament. We say we're going to draft a new one. For you and your experience in law, what should be the key element of such a bill or such a law?
Transparency, in one word. And by that, what I mean is that whatever our public officers, our judges, all those who we pay, I'm talking about the taxpayers' money go into their well-being and funding. The information must be available to us as taxpayers. It's as very simple as that. Because what's the use of filling forms which will never be verified by anybody, because it's the public who are the witnesses to these people whom we live with in our communities. And obviously, for anybody to be able to tell whether anybody is living in accordance with rules, regulations, standards that we have provided for, it must be the jury. The jury is the members of your own community. I mean, it can't be anybody else. But you know, all the previous speakers, I listened very carefully to all of them. It's the same frustrating point, which is it requires executive action. It's about somebody talking about the old lady becomes uncomfortable when you begin to talk about bones or dry bones. So that's what our politicians have become. And it's my view of the matter that if it gets to a point, one day I hope, but I'm not frustrated to the point of giving up or giving up hope. One day, this law will come into being. It's just a question of time. But for civil society organizations to keep up the talk, when the debate in this country become policy-based, in other words, issue-based, that's what I mean, issues-based, then regardless of political parties that we belong to, regardless of whom we support and whom we don't support, we'll come to appreciate that Ghana will always be Ghana. And that the people that sometimes we even support and we follow and so forth and so on, they are not worth the hero worship that we give to them, because we could even do better, but if we go into their shoes. But then let me round up, let me make this point. You know, I've had the benefit and the opportunity of, being privy to certain records, which are official records anyway. I'm talking of going back after Nkrumah's overthrow. As I made this point on your show, some weeks back, the Anijage Access Commission, then the Apalu, one of them is Access Commission, one of them was a public inquiry. When Nkrumah was overthrown and all his ministers were dragged before the Access Commission, and the other one was a kind of public findings regarding their properties and so forth and so on. I happen to know for a fact that Kwame Nkrumah's economic advisor was called Dr. Emmanuel Ayekumi. And I want you to cast your mind back to the hostility and the ferociousness of the everything against Nkrumah and his ministers after his overthrow. This man went through everything, and at the end of the day, he was adjudged to have acquired all his assets legitimately. And if you go and see the list of properties that this man acquired at that time, over 13 properties of so many cars, Pontiac, called them luxurious properties. And indeed was commended by the commission for the meticulous way and manner that he kept records and so forth and so on. You know, so the real point about what the lecturer was saying, which I understood perfectly, is that when Ayekumi had gone through order, he was actually commended. But you know, now what really happens is that almost every politician has attacked, and with due respect and without really casting slaves. You know, the popular talk is about the politicians with sharp teeth. Because they tell me it was Atameus who for the first time brought in ministers who were very, very young. We'll give Atameus that credit. But these young ministers, when they came in, we saw them. And after a while, we now see them, both in size, physically, and so forth and so on. And people cast all kinds of insinuations. And I don't think it is fair to them that before they are judged, people believe that they are corrupt, or people believe, you know, it's a kind of perception. And therefore, if everybody, we all consider the issues for what they are, our politicians will know that it is in their supreme interest that they have the opportunity to be assessed by their own peers, by the people within and among whom they live. It's in their own interest. And all public officers, it's in their own interest. Because I use Dr. Ayekumi's example to illustrate the point that it's not every politician who is indeed corrupt. It's not so. Some work really hard. But unless we are seeing how really hard that you work, what is it that makes you work, and not even work hard? What is it that makes you have all those properties that we think and we attribute to corruption? So this is the real issue that we have in this country. And of course, our politicians, I'm not too sure that they care too much. They understand the law as we say it. As for the amendment, what we try and do, I mean, even before the law is passed, obviously, changing circumstances of the times requires that, even as the law, as somebody said, Vitus Azeem said, the law is 10-year-old, yes. But what it means is that changes have taken place all over the place, and there are gaps to be filled.
No, even this bill itself has not been passed. It's all, you know, in there being considered. That's why he's saying that 10 years a bill has been in Parliament. What else do we have to do we need to draft a new bill, because we have one already there?
While the bill was lying, development and issues, people who studied the bill noticed that the certain provisions were, as it was said of the 1946 Ben's Constitution, was a still best. In other words, they have been outlived by actualities. Things that were going on required that those provisions even were changed to reflect a much more current trend and so forth. So maybe that's the way I want to put it. So I don't use the word amendment to mean that there's a law in being which was being amended. I'm talking about changes within the law even before it comes out. But please, I mean, all of these things all these reasons are no good reasons why the law has not been passed. And I'm telling you that since elections is looking us in the face, I'm hoping and wishing that those who do these political debates and moderations and so forth and so on will make it a point to put it to every politician and exact a promise from every politician concerning the next elections to give a direct response to his attitude towards that bill, and when the next parliament possibly convenes, what he intends to do to ensure that that law comes into being. That explains why I said I don't find myself so hopeless, or I don't find myself so distraught about what's going on. It is part of the Ghanaian way of doing things. We never want to know the truth. We don't care what people say, and because we know how to ride a storm. But one day, the law will catch up with all of us, and maybe when we do it well, it's not even about public officers only. It's not only about them. It's about the people who live in our communities. People are doing all kinds of things. So that one day, if we see a Galamsey kingpin has built this mansion or whatever, then this lifestyle or this may come in. And if you go all that money without having passed it through the right channels and so forth and so on, then you will have something to answer for. It will help all of us as Ghanaians.
But he won't come under the public officers bill.
He will not be. That's why I say it's not only about the public officers that we must concern ourselves with. That's the hypocrisy we have in Ghana. You know, I'll put it this way: public officers first, because they are the people who feed on us. They are the people who feed on us. They are the people who put money into their pocket. All their well-being. They travel business class, first class, all of those kind of things. Some of them, when they leave public service, they can't even afford a trotro fare. And while they are feeding at our expense, they also don't want us to. They don't want to account to us of what they do with our money. And that's the bare truth. I mean, no matter how anybody is angered, they should know that we feed them. They should know that the uniform they have at their back, we place the uniform there. That's the difference between them and us. So, but I'm saying that working towards a just and equal society, let it not only be public officers, though that's the issue we are now discussing. But I'm talking about looking into the future. That's the kind of environment that I'm hoping and expecting. Maybe not in our lifetime, maybe, who knows, maybe, but I'm hoping that one day this matter will no longer be a debate.
Dr. Kwapo, I mean, we learn from the best. In other jurisdictions, what could happen or what will be happening now for us to have such a code of conduct for public officers?
Usually it's issues that come up, right? Maybe incidents that you never anticipated, that in the course of work you stumble upon. It comes up, and then it forces a rethinking of the rules, practices, procedures, mechanisms in place. That may say to you, okay, we need to make some adjustments, or we need to broaden, the scope of activities that this covers. I'll give you a clear example. So at my institution, for example, last year, as we got closer to Christmas, the legal counsel had to clarify what gifts were acceptable, because sometimes officers have these small gift exchanges called Secret Santa, and there were issues about what is considered an appropriate gift to a colleague, a co-worker, someone who reports to you. And so the legal counsel had to clarify that and say, all right, if you want to give a gift, it can't be any more than $15 maximum. And if it's a gift of food, it has to be presented in such a way that everybody within the office, you have to put it in a public space so everybody can eat some. Okay. So there's some of these things that sometimes triggers, the need to look at the rules in place and whether either, for example, they need clarification or they need tweaking, or you need to add, a few more rules so that, again, you protect yourself, you protect the institution.
But Ms. Azeem, from what Doc has said, and from you laying the background, the foundation that it's been such a long time since we've had a certain bill in Parliament, does it seem to suggest that the politicians, I mean, in quote, those who are clothed with the authority to ensure that we get certain laws, are not really, they don't care whether or not we have a law that would make sure that the right things are done within their space and in the space of the public office?
They don't care. They don't want such laws in place. Laws that seek to check their behavior. They do not want to have those laws in place. They don't think that, they feel like it will affect them at best. Just look at the Right Information Bill. It took us how long to get it passed? Yeah. After several advocates, we met various committees of Parliament and the different parliamentary sessions before it was finally passed. Transparency and accountability are things that politicians do not want, because they think that you are going to expose them if they do the wrong thing, and probably use it to sort of control their behavior. But if you come genuinely to serve, you should not be afraid of that. If you don't have ill intention of looting the system, you should be able to allow these things to go through, especially the leadership. We cannot say that every politician behaves in the same way. So how about the leaders? You are chosen as a leader. You can bring pressure to bear on your membership to do certain things, but this doesn't seem to happen. Look, when we were doing the Right Information Bill, we met certain committees. They will assure us in the meeting, or that it will be fine. But when you go out, they tell you that, that bill will be passed. They say it openly to friends that bill will not be passed, until just recently that the bill got passed. So it is that commitment and the fear of the unknown. What is civil society and the citizens going to use this law for? Will it be used to harm us? And that is the main problem I see.
So if they don't want it, what should then be, or who should become our savior? Because the people who are supposed to do it now, as you say, they don't want it. Do we have to throw our hands in the air, or there is something we can do?
Sometimes the international community may come in, donors may come in. Now that we are having the public officer, we are having an IMF program, it is possible that the IMF and the other donors may put pressure on the government to have that bill passed, especially with the regulations surrounding the monies that were found in somebody's house. And that's why, even though I say it's ridiculous, I'm not surprised that the government is saying it's going to IMF to look for money to get that bill passed. So there's probably outside pressure, and sometimes, even though we don't like conditionalities, sometimes we may have to find solace in such conditionalities to get our leaders to work. So I think that's the only way out of this situation. It has been there for long, tried to do its guidelines, and yet nothing is happening.
Lawyer Pinto, what should we do?
We said that it took how many years for the Right to Information Act to come into being? It faced similar resistance as this act is also facing. But they said the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. At the end of the day, the laws come into being not because the politicians wish it, but because at the end of the day, the chorus becomes so loud that to keep ignoring it becomes another thing altogether. I would think very shameful if we really have to wait for these Bretton Woods institutions to begin to use it as a conditionality. But quite naturally, some of these things we bring it onto ourselves. And if that should be so, we will thank God for it. At the end of the day, if it comes into being, however it comes into being, we will be grateful to God for what comes into being and makes our public officers accountable. And I agree with the previous speaker that what is currently going on, even though Our Lady has not been pronounced guilty yet, but it gives an idea of how by miraculous circumstances our politicians come by all kinds of funds, and at the end of the day, it puts all of us into this furore and all the drama that we are going through. But we hope that one day this law will come into being. I mean, the politicians will bow to popular pressure, and that's why I'm saying that let's make it an issue. Civil society organizations, let's bring the issue to the very top of the agenda. All the journalists, you are one of them. You are one. You are speaking to us. You are one of them. You're going to engage politicians very soon. Put that question pointedly to them and ask them in their opinion, what is it that they do not want to assent or consent to the law coming into being, the bill becoming a law. Let's get it, extract it from our parliamentarians. You saw what happened in Parliament the last time that we're talking about this anti-gay law. The Speaker put it directly to the whole House. Let anyone, if there any man or woman here who is against what we are doing, and there was silence, I believe that if a similar question finds its way on the floor of Parliament, I'm not too sure that we're going to get one parliamentarian to speak against it or to say that it's opposed to the law being. But how the issue comes to the floor of Parliament is what we are all talking about. I believe that with the chorus going up into a crescendo, one day the politicians themselves cannot help it. Thank you very much.
Grateful. Dr. Kwapo, let me end with you with your suggestion on the way forward from here.
I think, I hope that the bill would not keep languishing. As I keep saying, for me, I see these rules as designed to protect the public officer, to help him or her not to get into trouble, to take away any veil of suspicion that they regularly and consistently work under. But I don't think they do recognize that they see these things. My suspicion is that they see some of these reporting things as an intrusion in their private spaces. And so I think until such time that we get to a point where we can sensitize them to realize that it inures to their own benefit, then I think we can make some good progress. Because, for a bill to stall that long tells me that the public servants are not sure whether this thing is supposed to protect them or harm them. Probably they are thinking of it as, this won't help us. But when they start thinking of it as, this is for our own benefit, we can make some progress and move this forward.
Doc, I'm grateful. And regards to the young ladies who disturb you, those ones who come for them.
I will do that.
All right, then. So I'm grateful to you, Lawyer Kweku Pinto. Mr. Vitus Azeem is an anti-graft campaigner. I'm grateful to all of you, gentlemen, for joining us. This is still the AM show. We'll take a quick break. We'll return with more. Stay with us.